Hey guys, welcome back to another soft-spoken study session a day before my AP exam. Brady just messaged me and I'm looking for we had a playlist thing and we put songs over here, the Enlightenment playlist, and it really helps me learn about the Enlightenment. That was a big part, which is what we're going to talk about today. But anyway, we're just going to jump right into it. So first, what was the English Civil War about? That's right, it was a battle from Parliament against the Stuart monarchy. And in order, can you tell me who was part of the Stuart monarchy? Good job. It was James Charles, Oliver Cromwell, Charles James. So first, within the Stuart monarchy, James, he hated the Parliament in general. He kind of started this war. He wanted kind of almost an absolute rule. And then Charles, James' son, wanted to tax a bunch and have lots of power. And then the Parliament said no. So he did not like the Parliament either. And then, after he was gone, Oliver Cromwell came in with the parliamentarians and went against the royalists. The parliamentarians were pro-parliament, let's take away the power from the royalists. And then the royalists were like, no, I think we need an absolute monarchy, just like Hobbes, which we'll talk about in a sec, but I think it's good that I mentioned him. And then we had the Restoration period, which was when Parliament restored the monarchy. And then Charles II became king, then James II, and then William of Orange was called to depose his father, which is William II, and then William III, and Mary II then somehow came into power after Charles and James, which Charles restored the monarchy during the Restoration period, and then William and Mary came in, and they were the leaders of what revolution? That's right. The Glorious Revolution. And it was glorious because William and Mary, when they took power, they signed the bill called the Declaration of Rights, which established parliamentary sovereignty, which limited the monarch's power and gave parliaments power to meet a lot and approve laws. So that was kind of the whole English or Glorious Revolution. That was a really important period. And just before we move on, I want to get a review from before is, what is mannerism? And then, what was the 30 Years' War? Who and what ended it? Frederick I on the Parliament side, Ferdinand II on the Catholic side. They fought a bunch. Stuff happened in the Danish part where the people were taxed if they weren't Catholic, which was the Edict of Restitution, and the Peace of Westphalia ended it and recognized Calvinism, and it kind of put the end of religious wars. And the mannerism was a criticism when artists painted in the manner of Michelangelo and Raphael, but they lacked in areas was that Michelangelo and Raphael did not. And one married older. So that's kind of what's going on. And it's also around this time period. It is like the 1600s. Alright, so going back to the Stuart monarchy, James I, he was, if we're thinking about absolutism, which is a rising part of European history in the 1600s right now, James believed in the divine right of kings, which is it's when he believed that God put him in that throne, like God put him there for a reason. And another, before we get to the big, best absolute ruler, we can get to Philip II of Spain. He has the height of the power. He united the Iberian Peninsula by controlling Portugal. Philip II controlled Portugal, remember that. At the Battle of Lepanto, we don't need to know what that is. Loss of Spanish Armada with English invasion, couldn't make decisions, never left home, and liked Catholicism. Philip II, all you need to know, let's do a quick recap. Catholicism, controlled Portugal, and against the Ottoman Empire and the English. And then the most important absolute ruler that you are definitely going to need to know about is Louis XIV, Louis XIV, also known as the Sun King, because he famously stated that just like the sun, without him, France would fall, France would die. And that's kind of true. He said, I am the state. He ruled since 5 years old. He ruled for 72 years, and he followed a system where intendants, like, were representatives of him and went to different countries and, like, on the behalf of him. And Cardinal or Finance Minister Jean-Baptiste Colbert was his finance minister, and when Louis XIV, which we talked about last time, in all his wars, we talked about him so long ago. Did we ever talk about that? No, we didn't. Sorry guys, I guess we didn't. Anyway, Louis XIV liked getting into wars, and he liked to get into wars because he wanted territory. Most powerful absolute ruler, finance minister Jean-Baptiste Colbert. I am the state, sent intendants everywhere. And then we've got Charles, which was the son of James. He needed to marry a Protestant because of Parliament, but James made him marry a Catholic. Parliament wanted him to marry a Protestant because Parliament was kind of like pro-freedom, pro-do whatever you want. And then his dad was like, no, so you had to marry a Catholic. And I guess he married Henrietta Maria, who was the sister of a French king. And then we've got some cardinals. Cardinal Richelieu and Cardinal Jules Mazarin. You may not need to know exactly who they are, just know they were finance ministers in France. He lived in the Palace of Versailles. He really liked gold. He was just very fancy, and just really remember, like, Louis XIV, rich, power. That's kind of what he was. What was a Czar? C-Z-A-R-S. Yeah, it was a leader in Russia. So if you see Caesar, like Caesar Louis XIV, then you'll immediately know it was from Russia, even though Louis XIV was not from Russia. But around the same time period was Peter the Great. which honestly, all you really need to know about him is that he traveled to Europe with the Grand Embassy. He was really amazed by all the technology and like culture of Europe, so he tried to westernize Russia. He was really like in touch with bringing like, I guess, education or printing presses and this books and literature over to Russia to try and westernize it. He lived in St. Petersburg, which is on the very west part of Russia. He wanted to be as close to Europe as he could. He was also an absolute ruler. He made people mine for money so he could fight wars. He established the Russian Orthodox Church, Holy Synod and Patriarch. And then his wife, Catherine the Great, she was at first on the Protestant side, and then she tried to help them out, and they kind of betrayed her. Almost, not really betrayed her, because they didn't really know she was on their side, but they did something, and she was like, oh, that's not nice, and then she turned, and she was against them. But she was pro-education, and all that type of stuff. A lot of that stuff was in Russia at the time. Peter the Great was pretty great. Not pretty great, I mean, he killed a lot of people, but anyway. She replenished the state treasury, seized land, and read philosopher stuff, and then onto the commercial revolution. That's kind of it for absolutism, which was a rising and then it fell, because everyone was like, wait a minute. So now we've got the commercial revolution, which was period of unprecedented expansion on commerce and trade, because it started when they were getting spices from Asia, and they were like, oh my god, this tea's kind of nice, which I have watched a pretty great ASMR video on. If you go over to Gentle Whispering ASMR, Maria, she's the best ASMR artist I know, one of the best. GB's pretty great too, and Diamond, Scottish Whispers, one of the other good ones. There's a lot of good ones, but I forgot most of them. So tariffs. What are tariffs? Yeah, they're just taxes on foreign products being imported, used to promote mercantilism, which was exporting more and bringing it in to get more gold and silver. It was kind of the country's wealth based on silver and gold. That's why the Palace of Versailles was so much gold, because he wouldn't be rich, and that was mercantilism. And then Portugal, Spain, France, England, and Netherlands became kind of, I don't want to say superpowers, but they were really high in power because they all had trading posts in Africa and Asia. And this was about the time Russia had expanded to the Pacific Ocean. And then we have all these different types of trade, so I'm just going to go through them real quick. What was the Middle Passage? Journey from West Africa to West Indies. Transatlantic slave trade. It's when they took African slaves and they took them to America because they killed all the natives there with their disease. Remember that? They killed the natives with their disease. And then we've got the triangle trade, which connects these two things. It's the trading route between Europe, America, and Africa. It's when they went south to get slaves, they brought them to America. They got sugar. Okay, over in the Americas, we've got fish, furs, timber, and like farm food. They took that and then they brought it over to Europe. And then it was kind of just a circle or a triangle. I'm gonna try as hard as I can to pass the Enlightenment. We're not even close. Yeah, anyway, the big things from America: fabrics, sugar, tobacco, rum, tea, coffee. These were all just big trade things. We don't need to know. I mean, you could make this stuff up. And plantations, everybody knows what that is. What is the act of abjuration? Abguration. This is when Netherlands declared freedom from taxation from Spain. And then during the 80 Years' War, the Dutch Republic was created, and that's when Dutch battled for freedom from Spain, stemming into a military agreement, the Union of Utrecht, which we will talk about in a little bit. And now, after Dutch kind of declared freedom from Spain, they created what? That was a joint stock company, private enterprise, and it was just like a company that got the money. The Dutch East India Company, that's right. And then, do you remember what a gentry is from last lesson? Yeah, it's upper class townspeople who are often professionals or margin. Oh, those are urban gentries. Gentries are like rich landowners. I think. I hope. Hopefully you guys remember that. And then we've got new weapons, so people like Louis XIV can fight in their wars. We've got, just name 3. Gunpowder, cannons, and bayonets. That's right. But also we were starting to come to balance of power, which not one empire would dominate anywhere. Oh, here's a good one. What was the Fronde? Fronde. Fronde. It was uprisings as a reaction to the policy that weakened influence from higher estates. First, they gave in, then they restored order. It didn't work, but it scarred Louis XIV to intensify absolutism. So just remember, the Fronde intensified absolutism because Louis XIV was like, whoa, these people they might have power against me. And remember, there was estates. There was like all the peasants at the bottom. The second estate was like middle class. First estate was like really, really, really rich people. And then the very top 1% was the king. Like less than 1%. Because and then Spain, under the Habsburgs, was very strong. France, under Louis XIV, was getting pretty strong. And then Sweden was Gustavus Adolphus, who inherited the throne, and he settled wars, made government, and made great mobile military. And also the Holy Roman Empire is starting to split. It is currently the year... No one knows. Yeah, no one knows what year it is, but... Anyway. Holy Roman Empire split, and Ottoman Empire attacked Vienna, Roman Empire, Habsburg and Polish Israel, won at Romania, and then the Ottoman declined. So, Ottoman, Holy Roman Empire, things we don't hear about anymore, declining. Louis XIV Wars, just name 2 of them. Years War, Spanish Succession. He did a lot of other ones, those are the 2 main ones. Spanish Succession was when Louis started this war for his grandson, Philip, Duke of Anjou, and he tried to conquer the Habsburgs, Spain, and England and the Dutch teamed up with Austria, hoping France would not gain Spanish territory. And then I guess they're just kind of like, oh, well, I don't want this war to go on anymore, so they created the Peace of Utrecht. So no one gained any land, they just all lost resources. Nothing really got out of that, just the Peace of Utrecht ended the Spanish Succession. And then the 9 Years' War, France fought Dutch, Spain, England, Austria, and the Holy Roman Empire for territory, and then they all made peace again. So it seems like he's just doing this for fun. Like, literally everyone is teaming up on him, everyone on the playground is going against him, he's still winning, but nothing's being gained out of this. But I do remember coming soon, I don't know if this was a Hispanic succession, but I think that was a Hispanic succession. Philip V, he was like related to Louis the 14th, and they, both Spanish and France, were scared they were gonna team up and make one big empire. So everyone was really scared of making that happen, so they were trying to just kind of keep them separate. And then over in the Prussians and the Habsburgs, we've got Frederick William I, son of Frederick, rules Prussia, expanded armies, blah, blah. And then what did Frederick II, aka the Great, what did he do in Prussia? He did the 7 Years' War because he attacked the Habsburgs when Maria Theresa left, and got teamed up on by Britain and Russia and attacked Saxony and Bohemia. Prussia won because Russian leader died, then teamed up with Peter III. It seems like a lot of this was just militarism. So if you want to think about absolutism around the 1600s, Louis XIV, absolutism, military, if they were in that time, that's probably what they were doing. Unless they had cardinal or finance minister in their name, then they were a finance or cardinal. And now, just kind of what started the scientific revolution and the Enlightenment? Like, what kind of led to this? I want to say, people were kind of starting to question, like, what is life? Like, we're kind of sitting around now, not much to do, because now that there's more farms, more food coming in from the Americas, and, a little bit of mechanization, a little bit of tools coming into the farming industry, they were just starting to question stuff, like, what is life? They wanted to use, like, science and figure out what is going on. And a good FRQ question is, the Renaissance set up conditions for the Enlightenment, because people realized if they band together, they can get their ideas heard, and the church won't censor them if they are together and they work together. So that's when people started to be like, whoa, just like Nicholas Copernicus, he was proven wrong by someone who's irrelevant. Heliocentric, sun-centered, was proven wrong because that was the church-sponsored one. Geocentric is the real one. And if Renaissance didn't happen and people were still afraid to share their ideas, we may never have known that. Now, Isaac Newton, Francis Bacon and Rene Descartes, what did they do? First, Francis Bacon, inductive reasoning, going from the specific to the general. 1 second. Hey guys, I'm back. I'm sorry. I hope that wasn't too loud. Alright, Rene Descartes. What did he do? Rene Descartes? Deductive reasoning. Went from general to specific. Deductive. Getting down. Getting specific. And Francis Bacon used his sense of smell and sight and all that to get data. Like, he used senses. He used his senses. While Rene Descartes was kind of like they're faulty, they can be tricked, which they can. And then who put these ideas together? Yep, Isaac Newton. He put these ideas together. That's all he's known for. I'm pretty sure like an apple hit him in the head, and then he was like, physics, let's make a test about it. So, hey guys, so I have something that I just found out. Nicholas Copernicus believed in a heliocentric universe, sun-centered. I thought that was wrong. I thought we were Earth-centered. No, heliocentric was right. Nicholas Copernicus, he was not sponsored by the church. He was going against the church. Aristotle was sponsored by the church. Geocentric, Aristotle said it was Earth-centered. So, just listen to that, please. Who found elliptical orbits in the solar system? Johannes Kepler. And then who worked with Johannes Kepler and made the telescope? Galileo. Alright, we're almost to the Enlightenment. So many ways to be wicked. What did Galen do? I believe he was an old person who worked in anatomy and physiology. He believed in the four humors, which was, you probably don't need to know this specifically, black and yellow bile, blood, and phlegm. And then who challenged this idea by saying it was chemical imbalances in specific organs, like diseases. Who challenged that? Yeah, Paracelsus. Okay. Who was kind of the circulatory system, blood goes to the heart kind of guy? Who was that? Harvey. And then what did Vesalius do? Andreas Vesalius? He did anatomy. And if you want to remember that, just remember cannibal. Vesalius, cannibal Kesha. That's what I put on my playlist. Because Andreas Vesalius talked about anatomy and was a big contributor to the discovery of what the human body actually looked like on the inside, although he was a grave robber. And then some emerging topics is astronomy, cosmology, what's beyond your structure of the universe, and then we've got epistemology, a way of understanding what we know and how, and then alchemy and astrology, heavenly bodies, and chemistry. People are asking why. Where did they meet during the Enlightenment? Like, what places did they go to talk about these philosophers? Where did they talk about these new ideas? Yep, salons and coffee houses. And then we already talked about Rene Descartes. He supported rationalism, found through reason what we deserve, what we observe, and then empiricism was what our senses find. Francis Bacon. So just to remember that Descartes is whatever's left. Bacon is you induct the bacon, you induct the smell of the bacon, which is smell, so senses, and then induct if reasoning. I've seen a lot of, I wrote down asking why for the Enlightenment a lot. It's just remember, like, people were just questioning things now. People were bored, they didn't have jobs, so they were just like, why does idiots not eat McDonald's every day? I don't know. Like, they were just questioning about dumb stuff. lips just got really like sore all of a sudden. Anyway, natural laws. What were these? Laws that apply to all humans. Okay. For Hobbes and Locke, just to give you Hobbes, I already said his name once. What did he do? My song for him was Hurricane. In this song, she talks about not feeling secure and says lyrics like, I'm boarding up my windows, locking up my heart. He wanted government security. He wanted an absolute ruler, an absolute monarchy. He wrote Leviathan, by the way, which sadly some people have to read in their English classes. I'm so sorry. And then his opponent, Locke. What did Locke do? He believed humans had natural rights, which were rights independent of the government, so he was anti-government. He wrote two treatises of a government, influential to constitutional writing. He was just Hobbes, government security, absolutism. Locke, freedom, people have rights independent of the government. And, Locke did tabula rasa, which means what? Blank slate. And what was a social contract? It was a mutual agreement from the people on who should govern them. So it was kind of like an election. Alright. Jean-Jacques Rousseau wrote The Social Contract, Man Born Free. So he also wrote Emile, which asserts education. In Emile, he talked about just men should be able to have an education, choose their own fate, have their own dream. So Rossi was kind of pro men, not women. He hated women. He did not like women. But he wanted men to be able to choose what path they wanted to take, not have it chosen for them. And then Mary Wollstonecraft, she's like the only important woman in this time period. Women rights. She wrote A Vindication of the Rights of Women, which challenged Rossi. They were against each other, just Rossi versus Mary Wollstonecraft. Mary Wollstonecraft, clearly the woman, she did women rights stuff. The only thing important about Dennis Diderot, what did he write? The encyclopedia. Alright, we're going to go all the way up and then we're going to stop at the French Revolution, which we will cover next class, which is literally tomorrow before the AP test. So I guess most of you will hopefully probably be watching if this video is famous next year, 2024. Who was Voltaire and what did he do? Religious freedom. Voltaire wanted religious freedom and he went to French prison because of it, which was the Bastille, which is very important very later. Next, Montesquieu. What did he do? The Spirit of Laws, that's what he wrote. He separated government branches. He wanted evened out power along the government. Checks and balances. Montesquieu was checks and balances. Yeah. And then we've got two more. There's two more important people in the Enlightenment. Cesare Beccaria. What did he do? He was against the death penalty, and he was the father of modern law and justice. He used scientific reasoning, which was inductive reasoning and deductive reasoning. No, that was a scientific method. Scientific method is deductive and inductive reasoning combined. Rationalism and empiricism combined. Caesarea, no death penalty. And then Marquis de Condorcet. What did he/she do? I don't know what it is. Woman abdicator, another woman abdicator. Marquis and Mary. Just remember okay, I was gonna say the only two M's, but we've got like all other M's. Marquis de Condorcet and Mary Wollstonecraft, women are equal. And lending libraries, collected info, and educated the citizenry. So he was for libraries, which helped educate the people. Alright, 36 minutes, quick recap. Hobbes wrote Leviathan, wanted government security, absolutism. Locke was totally against that, wanted rights independent of the government, tabula rasa, blank slate. People are born neither good or bad once they're born. Jean-Jacques Rousseau, he wrote Social Contract, Man's Born Like Child, and Emile, which says man is free, choose their own path. Rousseau, he also didn't like women. Mary Wollstonecraft and Marquis de Condorcet were for women's rights. Dennis Diderot, he wrote the Encyclopedia. Francis Maria wrote, he wrote Treatise of Toleration. He was just for religious freedom. And then Beccaria, no death penalty. Last, Montesquieu, he was a French lawyer, wrote The Spirit of Laws, Checks and Balances. There was also secret organizations like the Fraternity Brothers that met in Masonic lodges. Oh, and we're still on the Enlightenment. We haven't left yet. How exciting. Although we are very close to the end. Sorry guys, I just watched Descendants. Guys, we had a bunch of free period. As travel students, we have many privileges. And if you're not a travel student, I'm very sorry, but as travel students, and the last known travel students, we're the last class of travel students ever in Virginia. So we get many privileges. And one of those privileges is when all the blocks are switched up and we have fourth or third blocks first, like 3x, 3y, 4x, 4y. Sorry guys, this is a little brain break. We get free periods, and me and Marin, which you'll see in the Bahamas vlog, and many other vlogs of course, we watched Descendants and Descendants 2, and that song Wicked is stuck in my head. Like, we've got all the ways to be W-I-C-K-E-D. And it's all the voices in my head. So guys, I'm not a crazy anime. Alright, back to the Enlightenment. Let's go. What was deism? Just remember to watch. God set the world in motion, and now it's just watching. Like winding a clock and letting it go. Atheism, we all know what that is. You don't believe in God. Skepticism, everything should be approached with doubt. Methodist, you've had a personal experience. You've had a personal revelation with God. Which, oh. I'll come back to this. And then, what was pietism? A mystical personal experience with God. Like, mystical. And then, with deism, Voltaire supported this. And then Skepticism was just a big thing. Everything should be approached with doubt. This was David Hume, so just remember him. My song that I put with him was Dumb Dumb. This was a bad period of time in music for TikTok. I honestly like the song, but it wasn't the best period. If you guys were there, if you guys had TikTok. And now, a few other people that I want to talk about is and Robert Jacques Turgot, which is last CA Fair. Just remember Jacques Turgot, or leave alone. She believed the government, he believed that the government should leave the economy be. And Francis Quince was for agriculture, not industry. And laissez-faire, which means leave it to go. And tabula rasa means blank slate, which was law. And then the last important person of the Enlightenment was he was from mercantilism, capitalism, and he said there was an invisible hand guiding the economy decisions. Adam Smith. His name was Adam Smith. And the song I put with him was Bop to the Top, because anything it takes to climb the ladder of success. Suave, caliente. Alright, on to 18th century society and demographics 4.4. So just 18th century, we're now in the 1700s, we're getting out of absolutism. People are starting to really think about ideas now. We've got all these new weapons, all these new scientific reasonings, all this new healthcare things. Population is in check from disease and war. A lot of displaced farmers go to cities for work, and the population grew a bunch. Birth rate is good, and Malthus thought we ran out of food because there's no farms. And this is also what a period we could call what, because it's when thinkers use science to make more food and solve hunger problems. The agricultural revolution. Yep, we're getting really close to that. So now, because people are thinking, we're making mechanization of agriculture is getting people fed. So now people are going to cities for jobs. And then some land laws and things. Oh God, please don't call me. Guys, this video might end soon. If it does, then that's my sign, because someone's gonna call. Land reclamation was changing lands to make them more suitable, which I probably should have memorized for apes, but I think it's been 48 hours. No, it hasn't. It's barely been 24. I was gonna be like, oh, this was the answer. No. Or please, like, College Board is gonna watch my video. Actually, they might. And then we've got things like crop rotation, which is grow different crops in certain areas to keep the soil suitable for farming, something you also learned in AP Normal Science. And then we've got the Enclosure Acts and the Enclosure Movement, which allowed rich people to purchase common areas and turn them into commercial farms and just kind of reorganize the used land. And then they could reclaim it, which made it more suitable for farming. And then they used crop rotation to keep the soil suitable. And people that were kind of a little important a little bit after the Enlightenment were people like Cornelius from Meudon. He was a good engineer who created dikes for clearing land and stuff. And then Lady Mary Wortley Montagu, she pretty much discovered the vaccine, and then the guy who got credit for it was Edward Jenner, who officially created the vaccine. And we've also got things emerging like epidemics, or pandemics, actually. Epidemics or pandemics. Bubonic plague and smallpox. But because of Enlightenment thinkers like Mary Wortley Montagu, who's creating the vaccine, and Cornelius von Rudin, people are getting fed so they won't get sick because they have more comfort, or they're getting vaccinated. And this causes a rise in life expectancy. 18th century, rise in life expectancy. That's the big picture here, okay? Rise in life expectancy. What was I doing? I think I'm lost. Oh. Women are becoming more important and more independent. Not super independent, please. They don't get rights until like the 1900s, but there's a later marriage age, a smaller age difference, and now people were having illegitimate babies before marriage. I know. That's like common now. Like if you have babies after marriage, I feel like that's almost stranger now. That's okay. Now we've got hospitals too, not great ones, but, and then we've Empress Maria Theresa, which we've talked about before, from Philip II, when he invaded something because she was gone. Following Prussia, she mandated kids 6 through 12 went to school, so now education was on the rise. People migrated to cities, it was packed, sanitary got bad, so it got... Okay. So how do I... In summarization of the 18th century society and demographics, we've got Montagu creating the vaccine, we've got Bermudier creating like things like the Dyke, which helped consumer revolution. So we've got the vaccine and more food. Because of rising life expectancy, people are marrying later, and there's a smaller age difference, so it means their babies are going to be born later, so it's going to be longer lifespan for those babies. There's going to be hospitals, because more food is being produced with the mechanization of agriculture, people are moving to cities, which leads to less sanitation in the cities, and now they're really packed. And we'll learn about soon that, like around Louis XVI time, cities are really disgusting, and that almost causes life expectancy to go back down because of how bad it was in cities. But they were starting to migrate to cities in the 18th century. And there was also something called the Consumer Revolution, which the middle class started to emerge, and people started to be like, I want to act rich, I want to go shopping, I want to have fun clothes, I don't want to just live, I want to have fun. So they also started to buy imitations, they bought fakes. So like everyone at Brook Point, because honestly if you bought a real to Brook Point, you'd get robbed in a second. Not me though, because I wouldn't buy a fake, but if I did, I wouldn't bring it to Brook Point, because I feel like they'd rob me either way. Anyway, another brain break, and women were being recognized as people now, but not the people, how do I say this without like being rude, people who weren't white. No, they have yet to be recognized. They get recognized a lot later. So do women. But we've got people like Samuel Richardson, Pamela Carissa, Jane Austen, Charlotte Bronte, and George Eliot. They were all women-issue people. You don't even know all of those names, if anything. Like, you probably don't need to know any of them, because all the people on the College Board are old white people, just like all our presidents. So they're not going to talk about women's rights. The people who were the Amsco might have been a little bit spiced, but... And then the last thing we are going to talk about... One of the last things we're going to talk about from the 18th century society and demographics is the Baroque movement. Actually, this is culture and arts, but is when rich people patroned and established academies to exhibit works of art. So, once again, with the Consumer Revolution, there was like museums and malls and things like that. People were getting out. There was theaters, there was operas, there was taverns, there was restaurants, there was hotels, there was libraries. People are now having fun, and instead of working all day, all the time, just to survive and make it by. There was the Baroque movement, where now rich people patroned and were having fun with their art. And then there was people like Joanne Batch and Brandenburg Concentos, who were supported by the rich and wrote stuff for them. Oh, Jesus Christ. Too many people. Just some names to remember. Rembrandt, he painted biblical scenes. He was pretty important. I've heard about him before. We just got a lot of sculptors and painters. If it's in the 18th century, it was part of the Baroque movement. We've got operas. A lot of them were patroned by we've got like Spanish court or the Pope or rich people in general. We've got Johannes Vermeer. He painted domestic interior stuff, women doing chores, stuff like that. Rococo, looser Baroque art, light airy colors and ceilings. And then another few important, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, music. Jacques Louis David inspired people with paintings in the French Revolution, like Oath of Haradi. And then Daniel Defoe wrote about finding knowledge without the church. So once again, getting away from the church. And then one last important one was Johann Wolfgang van Gogh. He wrote Faust, a play, and a guy selling his soul, emotions after reason. So once again, just like in the Renaissance, people were painting poor people doing everyday tasks, trying to get away from the church. They were writing about freedom from the church, the operas and Ontarios and things like that. Even though they commissioned by kings and stuff, they were just like kind of almost freedom pieces. They could do what they want. And this was neoclassicism. A lot of this was neoclassicism. They were still back to ancient Greece-inspired art, simplistic and symmetric. That's what neoclassicism is. Over to 4.6, Enlightened and other approaches to power. So after the Enlightenment, monarchs were now being enlightened. And this caused the Age of Reason, which, I haven't asked a question in a while. I think I've just been talking. Frederick the Great, which is, we remember him, he comes back. What did he do? Why was he called Frederick the Great? In the Age of Reason, enlightened monarchs. He believed he should serve his people. He served his people. This was very new, that he was serving the people, not them serving him. Even though they were called enlightened monarchs, they would only use these ideas to further their goals, but rejected ones that would limit their political power. And there was also enlightened absolutism, so they weren't exactly fully enlightened, like Frederick the Great made people perceive the way that was, but anyway, people were starting to serve their people instead of them serving him. And nationalism, this becomes a really big thing in the future. This became a thing. So we see people are now starting to be loyal to the state and not religion. So it's not like, oh my God, I'm Catholic, I don't care what state you're from, we're Catholic, let's band together. It's now, I'm American is on top. I don't care what ethnicity, what gender, what country, what religion. I care what country, but if you're from America, you're with me. If you're not, bye. It's kind of nationalism now. And then Maria Theresa and son Joseph II. These were enlightened absolutists. They more freedom for the press, got rid of serfdom, poor people, poor conditions. They limited the Catholic Church, and then they signed something that protected Jews, Protestant, and Greek Orthodox religious citizens. So just protecting religious stuff. This was called the Edict of What? It's kind of an easy word. Edict of Toleration, that's right. So to sum up the Enlightened approaches of power, they were starting to serve their people, help out the poor people, like recognize like what's really going on in their state. Not to the point where they would lose power, but to the point where they could be seen as nice, like the Edict of Toleration. I want you guys to really remember that. Nationalism is starting to emerge in the beginning of the 18th century. And then for the last topic, 4.7, right before we get to topic 5, is Enlightenment thinkers. This was causation in the age of the scientific revolution and the Enlightenment. New ideas argue that people know is better than their faith or what they believe in. So now it's knowledge, it's not beliefs. It's kind of, I know my state's good, I'm gonna fight for my state. Skepticism, David Hume, like, why is my blood blue? You know? And this caused religious tolerance, vaccines, better food, enlightened monarchs, serfdom, poor people, their conditions getting better, stuff like that. So everything that I kind of, when I summed up stuff, that's like the best summary you're gonna get. So, in conclusion to today's lesson, so next time, either tonight again, I'm gonna upload 2 videos tonight. We'll see how long it takes to upload this one because it literally takes like so long. Or tomorrow, because the test is in 2 days. It's actually May 5th. It's not Monday. It's kind of Monday. Oh my god, it's 8. It's 8 exactly. Okay. Yeah, and exactly 36 hours, I have to take the AP test. So, and good luck to you guys if you're watching this. Happy AP testing. Happy Hunger Games. May the odds ever be in your favor.